Welcome back. We are at a point in the week that we traditionally call Good Friday. And it's a curious title. Good Friday on the day that Jesus dies. What do you think about that title, Paul? Good Friday.
Yeah, so the word good in this term comes from a German term. And the German term has this sense that it's an irony of good. It's good for us that Jesus does die because it accomplishes what God intended in his death, an atoning death, a death that covers us and covers our sin. So it is almost an ironic statement, and we're going to get into some irony in just a moment in the Gospel of Mark.
So I want to catch you up. If you remember yesterday, we had Jesus to Gethsemane, where he is alone. I encourage you to go back and read in the Gospels Jesus' time in Gethsemane. But that's where he's betrayed. That's where he is vulnerable. There's not huge crowds surrounding him, only the inner circle of the disciples, and they could barely stay awake even. So it gave the opportunity for the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders, and they had their own police force, the temple police. They were then able to arrest him without many people knowing what was going on. So they take him from the garden. They take him, and Paul and I had the chance to visit these sites a few years ago with a group of pastors. And to go from Gethsemane up to, you go back down and up a little towards the Temple Mount. Along the way there is the house of Caiaphas, where it is believed that Jesus was tried by the religious leaders. This is a religious trial. This isn't a political trial. But they find him guilty by their laws, by the law of Moses, and then they take him from there to Pilate. They have to take him to Pilate, and Pilate is the Roman governor of the province, because they don't have the ability or authority to carry out a death sentence. Only the Romans have the ability to carry out the sentence of death. So they take him to Pilate and basically say, we found this man guilty of various crimes. You should kill him for these crimes. The trial happens with Pilate. Pilate struggles, depending on which gospel you read, with what exactly did Jesus do. But essentially, Jesus is, from the Roman point of view, sentenced to death for being treasonous, for claiming to be Lord. And then he is crucified, and we won't go into that a whole lot. I think you probably know that story. Roman crucifixion was horrific. To nail someone to a cross after they've been severely beaten. And what would kill you in crucifixion was actually you would suffocate to death. As the victim is hung on the cross, the body weight gets heavier and heavier, and respiration gets harder and harder, and you essentially die of what we would probably call congestive heart failure. It's a horrific way to die. And so as we come to Good Friday, and Jesus has been through all of this torment, all of this harm, we get to this scene that Mark records for us in Mark 15:33 through 39. And Paul, would you please read that for us?
Yeah, so I want you to listen for Mark. Mark's gospel is full of irony. And listen for the irony here of who actually recognizes Jesus for who he really is. For the first time in Mark's gospel, someone actually gets it right. From Mark chapter 15, when it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, quoting from Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, listen, he's calling for Elijah. And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him, saying, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down. But then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now when the centurion, the Roman soldier who was in charge of 100 soldiers, when a military man who had no idea about the prophecies, who had no idea about the Jewish expectations of Messiah. When the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly, this man was God's son. The irony of all of the times and all the places that nobody seemed to be able to really understand who Jesus really was. The disciples always getting it wrong. Peter, I think you're the Messiah, and I think this is what that means. No, none of that. It's this Roman soldier who sees Jesus breathe his last and die and says, this man was God's son.
And so Mark's gospel has a beginning with the demons recognize who Jesus is. And at the end, an agent of the empire recognizes who Jesus is. And I like the way you put that, this man who had no idea of the Jewish traditions or prophecies, but he would have been told who was God's son. And who would that be?
Yeah, so it's Jesus, and we find in the other Gospels that it was written on the top of the cross in several different languages that this is the King of the Jews. Others said it should have said he claimed to be, but the inscription was, this is the King of the Jews. And
this Roman centurion would have been indoctrinated into the cult of the emperor, which said, no, Caesar is divine. Caesar is the son of a god, right? And so here's this man who has this understanding of Caesar being divine. He's like, and maybe I wouldn't doubt it, if this guy's a centurion, he probably had met Caesar somewhere along the way, or various rulers. And he says, no, now I know truly this man is God's son.
So we could spend the rest of our lifetime contemplating the meaning of what happens on that Good Friday, this day in which Jesus dies for us.
And I think it's important to recognize that throughout the history of the church, there have been various ways of understanding what Christ accomplishes, what God does in the death of Jesus Christ. And some of them, and they run the gamut of sacrifice to all the way to example. Well, what I like, one of my personal favorite writers is Dallas Willard, and he puts it this way: while there are many will debate what exactly Jesus accomplishes and what it exactly means, what we should know is that whatever God accomplishes through Jesus is good for God and good for us.
It is in this most still a way that we're always going to be working out in our own lives and our own minds and ways of thinking. What Jesus did, though, was a supreme example of who God is for the world. A God that would know no bounds in terms of love and what God would be willing to give to bridge that gap of brokenness. And I think for all of us today to pause for a moment and think, we were on the mind of Jesus that day when he died. It becomes that personal for us. We were there, and he was giving his life for us.
And this idea of the curtain in the temple, that curtain cordoned off the Holy of Holies, where it was believed the very presence of God existed and dwelt within the temple. No one could go in there and get close to that presence of God. One priest once a year could crawl in there on his stomach with his face to the ground,
with a rope around him in case they needed to pull him out.
Yeah, to utter the confession of the sins of the people. God was distant and remote in that way of thinking. And the temple curtain being torn is and Mark is saying, God is let loose on this world. No one has special access to God. God is available to all because of what Christ has done.
So on this Good Friday, I hope that you're going to find ample time to break away from all the other activity that we will likely have, the mowing of the grass, the washing of the clothes, and maybe just spend a moment thinking, what has Jesus done for me? And hope that it becomes a life-giving moment for you, where you recognize both forgiveness, but reconciliation in life is given.
And don't be too quick to move beyond this moment. We do not like pain. We don't like hurt. We don't like loss. We avoid that almost at all costs. Yet Jesus doesn't shy away from that. And so the pain of Christ, Jesus says if we follow him, we're not going to be immune to pain, hurt, and loss. We all have stories of pain, hurt, and loss. That's part of life. It's part of life for everyone. The question is, what will that pain, hurt, and loss become? Jesus gives himself completely over to God the Father. And it as hard as it is, we believe that Jesus' pain, hurt, and suffering is redemptive. And our own pain, hurt, and suffering, it can be devastating. I know you've been through some very difficult times in your own life, and we all have. It's a matter of degree. But what does it mean to hand that back over to a God who knows what it means to hurt?
This is the ultimate act of something horrible occurring that we cannot fully understand. But the trust for us is that God on the other end is going to bring out something good. And that's what we're anticipating to celebrate when we finally get to Sunday.
We're not there yet.
Not there yet.
Tomorrow, Jesus is dead. We have to remember that. He's not passed out. He's not revived on Sunday. He is resurrected, which means he moves from being dead to being alive. And so for the folks here at Denver, just want to remind you, we will have services at 6:45, which will be our sunrise service in the cemetery. Then 8:15, our service is in the sanctuary, a traditional service. 10:15, we will be back outside again at the Arbor for acoustic worship. And then 11:15, back inside Family Life Center for our contemporary worship service. And how about you all on Easter morning?
On Easter morning at 7 a.m., we're joining with our sisters and brothers throughout Huntersville at Independence Hill Baptist Church. We'll have Baptist, Presbyterians, and Methodists all together for a sunrise service. No Lutherans this time. We'll work on that next time. And then at 10:30, we're going to be outside at the back part of our campus at the preschool entrance, where we're fully anticipating families, everybody coming back together. It's going to be like a homecoming, a family reunion, where we're hoping that everybody comes together, celebrates this best news the world has ever heard. And so we look forward to seeing you on Easter Sunday at 10:30 on that morning.
So that's Sunday, but for now, I pray that you will sit with Good Friday and Holy Saturday. Take some time to simply ponder what God has done for us. Thank you for being a part of these 5 days of devotions and study. Thank you, Paul, for making your way over to Denver to shoot this, and I appreciate you very much. And it's an honor to be in ministry with you.
And Steve and I are great friends, and I hope you recognize that our connection, I hope it becomes a good connection for you.
So God bless you all, and we look forward to doing more of this type of thing in the future.
Take care. God bless you.
All right.